Whenever I hear about someone on death row being exonerated by DNA evidence, I always find myself wondering how a death sentence could have been handed down to an innocent person. What kind of evidence was used to convict someone who didn't do it? Is it even possible that there was any physical evidence against someone who wasn't even at the scene? But as perplexing as such a situation has always been to me, it is nothing compared to the bafflement I have suffered of late by this seemingly unanswerable question. How could a case with no evidence result in a conviction, while one teeming with evidence cannot even result in an indictment? Every day that the January 6th hearings are broadcast, a new smoking gun seems to rear its ugly head. After hearing hours of testimony that must certainly have been more than a prosecutor had when securing a conviction against someone who didn't do it, legal pundits sit around and discuss how the testimony was probably not enough to get an indictment. How is it even possible that the testimony of a jailhouse snitch can send someone to the electric chair, while the testimony of a White House lawyer who most certainly must have required a top secret security clearance just to get through the door, does not even result in an arrest? It is going to be next to impossible for America to call itself a nation of laws after these proceedings are complete and Donald Trump is actually allowed to run for president again. How will our diplomats ever be able to hold their heads high when dealing with nations that allegedly sponsor terrorism, when our nation's leader called for an insurrection and our nation of laws cannot even identify a law that he had broken? Especially when some of those so called state sponsors of terrorism are nations that do not even have capital punishment. This affront to the party of law and order seems to just be the beginning. Prior to the official overturning of Roe v. Wade, I would often speak in the abstract of 11-year-old girls being impregnated by their relatives, then being forced to carry the pregnancies to term. Well, this is no longer a mere abstraction. In Ohio, a 10-year-old girl was raped and became pregnant. Apparently, the pregnancy was discovered after Roe was overturned and after one of those notorious trigger laws went into effect in Ohio. This poor little girl was forced to travel to Indiana to end this highly unfortunate pregnancy. What brought the situation into the realm of dystopia was the fact that there were allegedly people who were saying that the story was false. So, to uphold their ridiculous ideological stand on abortion, the Law and Order Party has found itself in the unenviable position of having to side with people who rape little girls. Because it is far more likely than not that prior to abortion taking center stage in this country politically, Republicans would be prepared to draw and quarter anyone who was charged with such a heinous crime. Now they are prepared to dismiss such a crime as a hoax. Does anyone see shades of Sandy Hook and Alex Jones in this scenario? In the past, we as Americans could look the other way when the rest of the world criticized us for continuing the practice of capital punishment. We could dismiss allegations that we were a violent society when the number of gun deaths in our country was tenfold that of other developed nations. We could do these things because we have always been able to cite the fact that we have never had a violent transfer of power. Well, we no longer can make such a claim. And in a couple of years, this shining city on a hill will either re-elect the man who brought our government to the brink of collapse or actually experience that collapse when we fail to do so. What, I wonder, will the rest of the world think of us then?